Year 4, Part 1. Pat looked out of the little parlor window, a bit wistfully, one evening in late November. Another summer was ended. How quickly summers passed now! There was a hard gray twilight after a little snow, and there was a threat of still more snow in the dour air. The shadows, chilly, hostile shadows, seemed to be raining out of the silver bush. A biting wind was lashing everything, as if it determined to take its ill temper out on the world. A few forlorn yellow leaves blew crazily over the lawn. An empty nest swung lonesomely in the wind from a bough of the big apple tree, on which the pale yellow-green apples always stayed so long after the leaves were gone. The apples were no good, and were never picked, but the tree always looked so exquisite in its spring blossom that Pat wouldn't have it cut down. It had been what Pat called a peevish day, and even the loneliness of a tall, dark spruce tree near the dike, powdered with feathers of snow, did not give her the shiver of delight such things usually did. She thought it was the kind of day that would make people quarrel, if people ever quarreled at Silver Bush. But November had been a vexing month all through. One day glorious, the next day savage. You never knew just where you were with it, and Pat did not like this evening. She felt as if some long finger of change, which was always reaching out to her, was at last just on the point of touching her. She was restless. She would have liked to go up to the Longhouse, but the Kirks were away. She wished Ray would come home. Ray must have called somewhere after school, though Ray hadn't been exactly the same for the last 2 months. Pat couldn't lay her finger just on the point of difference, but she felt it in her sensitive soul. Ray sometimes snapped now, she who had always been so sunshiny. And sometimes Pat thought that when she looked meaningly at Ray in the presence of others, to share the savor of some subtle joke, Ray averted her eyes without any answering twinkle. And at times it almost seemed as if she had taken up a pose of being misunderstood. What was wrong? Weren't things going well in school? From all Pat could find out, they were, but she couldn't rid herself of the feeling that Ray had some secret trouble. For the first time, an unshared trouble. Nothing was really changed. And yet, Pat had moments of feeling that everything was changed. Once she asked Ray if anything was worrying her, and Ray snapped out so savage a "Nonsense!" that Pat held her peace. Surely it couldn't be the fact that Mr. Wheeler had suddenly stopped coming to Silver Bush and was reputed to have a wild case on a visiting girl from New Brunswick that accounted for the mournful mauve smudges under Ray's blue eyes some mornings. Pat reassured herself by reflecting that this would pass, and meanwhile Silver Bush made everything bearable. Pat loved it more with every passing year and all the little household rites that meant so much to her. Always when she came home to Silver Bush, its peace and dignity and beauty seemed to envelop her like a charm. Nothing very terrible could happen there. Judy's cheery philosophy never failed, but Pat could not mention, even to Judy, the vague chill of change between herself and Ray. In the evenings when they foregathered in the kitchen and Tilly Tuck played on his fiddle, she sometimes felt that she must only have imagined it. Ray was the gayest of them all then. A bit too gay, Judy thought, though she never said so. Things did be often arranging themselves if you just let them alone. Judy was more worried over a reckless look she sometimes caught in Sid's brown eyes, and over certain bits of gossip that came her way occasionally. Pat lighted the lamp as Sid and Ray came in. Ray flung her school books on a chair and said nothing, but Sid had a chuckle and a bit of news. "Your go-preacher is gone, Pat. The Holy Seas are blaming you for it.
They say you flirted with him and made a fool of him, and he can't stand the place now. Aunt Polly is especially down on you. She adores that shepherd."
Sid spoke banteringly, and Pat had some laughing rejoinder ready, when a smothered sound, between a gasp and a cry, made them look at Ray.
"Great Scott, sis! You'll singe your eyelashes if you let your eyes blaze like that," said Sid. Ray took no notice of him. She was looking at Pat.
"So this is your doing. You have driven him away," she said in a low, tense tone. Such a tone as Pat had never heard Ray use before. 17-year-old Ray, whom Pat still thought of as a child. Pat almost laughed, but laughter suddenly fell dead on her lips. Why, the poor darling was in earnest. And how pretty she looked in her golden brown dress, with her flushed cheeks and over bright eyes. Her head positively shone like a lamp in the dark corner. She was so sweet, and absurd, and deadly serious. This last realization should have warned Pat, but didn't. "Ray, dearest, don't be foolish," she said gently.
"Oh, don't be foolish," mocked Ray furiously. "That's your attitude, I know, has been right along.
I am a mere baby, of course. I have no rights, no feelings at all. No claim to be considered a human being. Don't be foolish, says the wise Patricia. That really is a clever idea." Ray's voice trembled with passion. She rushed out of the little parlor and up the stairs like a golden whirlwind. There were 3 doors on the way to her room, and she banged them all.
"Whoa," whistled Sid. "I always knew she had a bad case on Wheeler, but I didn't think it went that deep."
"Sid, you don't think she cared, really?"
"Oh, calf love, no doubt. We all survive it, but it hurts at the time." Sid laughed a bit bitterly.
Pat went up to her room. Ray was pacing up and down it like a caged animal. She turned a stormy young face on her sister. "Leave me alone, can't you? You've done me enough harm, haven't you? You took him from me, deliberately. I saw you trying to attract him. What chance had I? Well, I forgave you, but now he's gone. He's gone, and I'll never see him again. And I can't stand it. I hate you. I hate you. I hate everything." "Please don't let's quarrel," said Pat helplessly. In a desperate effort to be calm, she picked up her best pair of silk stockings and began to polish the mirror with them, not in the least knowing what she held in her hand. It was the last straw for Ray. "Who was quarreling? Don't try to put the blame on me." "Oh, Ray, don't twist everything I say to mean something else." "Oh, don't try to twist things," she says. "Who twisted things this summer? All summer, to make him think me a child. It's such an interesting thing to watch the man you love making love to another woman, and that woman your own sister, who is deliberately trying to attract him, just for her own amusement." "Ray, never. I did try to save you from... Save me? From what? You may well hesitate. You know you made him think I cared for Jerry Arnold. Jerry Arnold! A pipsqueak like that. It was Lawrence Wheeler I loved all the time, and you knew it. He loved me too, till you came between us. Yes, he did. The first time we met, we knew we had loved each other in 1,000 former lives." For the life of her, Pat couldn't help smiling. She recognized the phrase. Hadn't Lawrence Wheeler of the soulful eyes said it to her? "Suppose we talk, or try to, as if we were grown up," she suggested kindly. "Oh, but I'm not grown up. I'm only a child." Ray was pacing feverishly up and down the room. "A child can't see, can't love, can't suffer. Oh, what I've gone through these past 2 months, and nobody saw, nobody understood, nobody has ever tried to understand me. You didn't. You care for nothing but Silverbush.
You acted as you did just because you're so crazy to keep Silverbush always the same. My own sister to use me like that." Pat lost her patience, and her temper too. The idea of a scene like this over a creature like Larry Wheeler? "This has gone far enough," she said frostily. "I agree with you." Ray was frost instantly also. "When you come to your senses," said Pat, "you'll realize, perhaps, just what a goose you've made of yourself over a goat preacher with cow's eyes." "Don't you think you're really being a little vulgar, my dear Patricia?" said Ray, with eyes of blue ice. "I am of no consequence, of course, but there is such thing as good taste. You seem to have forgotten that, along with several other things. Never mention Lawrence Wheeler's name to me again." Pat clamped her teeth together to keep from saying things she would have been terribly sorry for afterwards. The urge to say them passed. "We've both lost our tempers, Ray, and said foolish things. We'll feel differently in the morning." "Oh, will we? I'll never feel differently, and I'll never forgive you, Pat Gardner. Never. You and that old widower of yours." "Who is being vulgar now?" Pat was furious again. "At least Mr. Kirk is a gentleman." "And Lawrence Wheeler isn't, I suppose?" "You can suppose what you like. You've dragged his name up again. He was simply too sloppy for anything. I never dreamed that you, Ray Gardner of Silverbush, could take him seriously, and he'd been eating onions before he proposed to me." "Oh, so he proposed to you. I didn't know you had lured him on that far. I thought even you had enough self-respect to stop short of that." "We have had enough of this," said Pat, her voice trembling. "I think so, too. But let me tell you this, Pat Gardner. Since you are so bent on saving people, you'd better look after Sid a bit. He's dangling around May Binney again. I've known it for weeks, but I didn't say anything about it because I knew it would worry you. I had a little consideration for you. But you've been so intent on ruining my life, it has ceased to matter to you what Sid does, I suppose." "Ray, dearest, we're both upset. We're both saying things we shouldn't. Let's forget this. We mustn't let anyone know we've quarreled." "I don't care if all the world knows it." Ray marched out of the room. She did not come back. That night she slept in the poet's room, if she slept at all. Pat didn't. It was the first time since the night before Mother's operation that she had lain awake all night. She and Ray couldn't have quarreled. After all their years of comradeship and love, all their secrets kept and shared together, it must be a horrid dream. The Binney girls were always quarreling. One expected nothing better of them. But such things simply couldn't happen at Silverbush. Was there any truth in what Ray had said about Sid and May? There couldn't be. It was nothing but idle gossip. She knew Sid better than that. Of course, May Binney was pretty, with the obvious, indisputable prettiness of rich black hair, vivid color, laughing, brilliant, bold eyes. But Sid could never care for her after Betts, or even after sweet, foolish, mistaken Dorothy. Pat brushed the teasing thought away. It was so easy to start gossip in the Glens. Nothing mattered just now but the quarrel with Ray. Then it was dawn. Very early dawn is a dreary thing. Nothing is quite human. The world is fey. And there was no Ray in the little bed beside hers. Pat had always loved to watch Ray waking up. She had such a pretty way of doing it, and the morning sunshine always poured in on her head, making it like a warm pool of gold on the pillow. But there was no Ray this morning, no sunshine. Pat sat up and looked out of the window. The different farmsteads were beginning to take form in the pale gray light on the thin snow. The little row of sheep tracks, leading from the church barn across the mince pie field, might have been made by pen. A chilly, foolish little wind of dawn was sighing around the eaves.
A flock of tiny snowbirds settled on the roof of the granary. The haystacks in the field of farewell summers looked gnome-like in the pale grayness. Pat gazed drearily at the brown clouds and the wide white fields and the lonely star of morning. Everything seemed so much the same, and everything was so horribly changed. Pat looked like the ghost of herself at breakfast, but Ray came down cool, gay, smiling, her face apparently as blithe as the day. She tossed an airy word to Pat, bantered Sid, complimented Judy on her muffins, and went off to school with a parting pat for Bold and Bad. Pat tried to feel relieved. It had blown over. Ray was ashamed of her outburst and wanted to ignore it. She was just going to act as if nothing had happened. "I won't remember it either," vowed Pat. But there was a sore spot in her heart, even after she had talked it all over with Judy. Judy, who had suspected all along that Ray was nursing some secret sorrow that loomed large in the eyes of 17. "Judy, it was dreadful. We both lost our tempers and said blistering things that can never be forgotten." Oh, it do be amazing how much we can be forgetting in life," said Judy. "But it was so ugly, Judy. There has never been a quarrel at Silverbush before." Oh, hasn't there been now, darlint? Sure, there was lashings of them when your dad and his gang were growing up. The rafters would ring with their shouting at each other, and Edith giving her opinion of everybody every once in so long. This will be passing away just as they did. Did you ever be hearing the rising? Old Angus MacLeod of the Silver Grin didn't hang himself? Just made up his mind to, all because life did be getting too tedious. And then he had a fight with his wife, the first one they'd ever had. It livened him up so he went out and used the rope to tie up a calf, and never was tempted again. As for poor little Cuddles, that sore and hurt and thinking it do be going to hurt forever. Just you be taking no notice, Patsy. Be yourself, and everything will be just the same, only more so." "Mother must know nothing of it. I won't have Mother hurt," said Pat firmly. "If she can be keeping it from her, she do be cleverer than I'm thinking," Judy told Gentleman Tom when Pat had gone out. "And I'm fearing this quarrel do be a bit more serious than I've been pretending. When two people don't be caring over much for each other, a quarrel never amounts to much between them. It's soon made up. But when they love each other like Patsy and Cuddles, it do be going so deep, it's real hard to be forgetting it. I'm wishing Long Alec had chased that go-preacher off Silverbush with a shotgun the first time he ever showed his cow eyes here. Whatever could any girl be seeing in him? Didn't he nearly sit down on Gentleman Tom the first time he called?"